Ready or not, it's 5:30, so what I'm going to do is look as everyone kind of dolls up here to get started. Jeannie, we'll call our meeting to order.
We were busy enough.
I know. I'm so sorry I couldn't make it. But that's like my favorite meeting, other than city council. Yeah. So glad you could all be here. Henry Shaw from CAPSA is going to speak to us about domestic violence awareness month. So it's Henry. Oh, there you are. Awesome. I didn't see you hiding back there.
Yes, sorry.
I'm so glad you could come. When you are done, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I just have a little bit of information to share. As was mentioned, my name is Henry Shaw. I am a representative of CAPSA's education department. I'm fairly new to the department, fairly new to CAPSA, but I'm excited to be involved in the great work that we're doing. I'm happy to report that a lot of good things are happening in the community. We're able to get into a lot of different businesses. We even had a great presentation this morning with one of the branches of Cache Valley Bank. So today I'm here to just share a little bit of information. So we've gathered some statistics at CAPSA for, this is the time period of July, from July 2020 to June 2021. So these are statistics that we've gathered over that period of time. And I'll just share those with you right now. So the first is we have 1,670 individuals served total, 8,392 crisis calls answered, 284 clients sheltered in our emergency shelter, 1,465 individuals helped through casework or advocacy.
Is this year to date?
Excuse me, what was that?
Is this year to date or is this a full year?
I believe this is I guess it's just shy of a year. June 2020 to July 2021. Okay. So yes, 424 therapy clients, 67 families housed. And so these numbers were gathered, and it's a measurement that we've made. We've seen an increase in numbers since the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's a big reason that we wanted to bring these statistics, were to show that these numbers have increased because of that pandemic. But along with those numbers, CAPSA has increased and bolstered its efforts to make sure that we can prevent these things from happening. So some other numbers associated, we've had over 700 presentations within the community with over 14,000 participants in those presentations. So as I mentioned, we've really strengthened our efforts. Our numbers are growing within the company, and because of that, our building is expanding. I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to see that. I know our offices are a little bit tucked away, but we are expanding onto that and hiring many new employees to our department, as well as to hiring caseworkers and things of that nature to be able to keep up with these increasing numbers. So we want to reach out to our city council members and just make you aware of our ribbon cutting ceremony. Should be coming up on October the 29th. So we're wondering who the best person to reach out to would be, if we just need to send further information to the city clerk, if that's the best way of doing that, or who would that be, I guess.
I would recommend Teresa. She can get everything out to us.
Okay, perfect. What's the best email, or what's the best way to reach you, or should I?
Teresa.harris@loganutah.org.
Okay, perfect.
Memorized.
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. I'll make a note of that.
Do you have a time? What's the time?
Isn't it 10 o'clock in the morning?
I believe so. As far as it was mentioned to me, it's just, it's that early morning hours. So yes.
They're doing tours.
Yes. Yeah, I believe there's a short tour before the actual ceremony, and then there will be
another one afterwards.
tours after that. So yes. Yep. So yeah, well, I'll reach out to you, make sure that we get that information sent along. So without anything else, were there any questions that I could answer before I lead us in that?
I guess I'm impressed that you're doing as much outreach to try to reduce the caseload.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the big focus, obviously.
Yes. I mean, we're bolstering our efforts in casework as well, trying to get more volunteers, but definitely our education department is doing everything that they can to work on the prevention side of things. So, yeah.
I know your outreach to schools is very important.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely. Yep. Anything else? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Now you're on.
Yes.
All right.
Now you're up.
Sounds good. If everyone will please rise. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn it off.
Thanks for sharing that information with us, Henry. Thank you. And just a reminder for the council, we've been asked to make sure and speak into our microphones a little bit more, since sometimes the audio is not coming through very well. So eat those microphones. That's the terminology.
That's the technical term. Yeah, okay.
So it is. I do radio from time to time. So.
That's true, you do.
All right, I will be open to a motion for accepting the minutes and approval of the agenda for tonight.
So we do have an amendment to the minutes, correct, as in item 8A. Is that the item that was put on hold?
On the agenda?
On the agenda?
Been asked for a continuance as far as we know. Unless you have some other information.
Unless Russ has an update, they definitely have asked to have this continued. What we don't have is a specific date and when to continue it to. So it's up to the council to continue it to a date specific or table it and then have to renotice. There's some negotiation about coming back with maybe a different proposal, but none of that's been formally submitted, so.
Okay, so we don't need to change the agenda, we're still gonna discuss it?
Well, you don't have to, but you could continue it to, next meeting and
Okay.
wait for more
Either
information.
October 19th or November 2nd, we could
Yeah.
pick a date. So, yeah. Thank you, Kipper.
I'll move approval of the agenda and of the minutes.
I'll second.
All right. Approval of the agenda and acceptance of the minutes has been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Approved and accepted. All right, our regular meeting schedule are the first and third Tuesdays at 5:30, and our next meeting will be October 19th, and that's coming up in 2 weeks. So, one quick announcement: tomorrow from 5 till 7 p.m. is our Meet the Candidates night, and Jason Williams from the Cache Valley Media Group will be here, and he will be the moderator, and so we'll have the mayor and our city, those running for mayor and those running for city council this year will be here to answer questions from Jason, it sounds like. Aren't you excited?
Always happy to speak to the public.
Sounds great. So now is your opportunity, if you have any questions or comments you'd like to address, excuse me, the city council, please come to the microphone, give your name and where you reside, make sure and sign in, please. Try and keep your time to 3 minutes or less. We would appreciate that. And now's your opportunity if you'd like to speak to non-agenda items for tonight. Not seeing anyone, we'll move on to our mayor and staff reports. Mayor, please.
Thank you, and I just have one announcement before I go on to item 6A. I just today received an email from a woman who is with the Utah Independent Redistricting Commission. We work with the state legislature in drafting new voting maps, and every 10 years the state of Utah redistricts, and this is the time to do that again. So the commissioners, which includes former Senator Lyle Hilliard from our area, they will be touring the state to visit communities and get feedback. They will be in Logan on Saturday, October 16th at the Taggart Student Center at 11 a.m. It will also be streamed, is my understanding. So they are just, again, seeking input and comments. They have a variety of maps that the committee has come up with. I think a couple have been submitted by citizens as well. So your involvement, and there also is a way to comment just on their website. Anyway, if anyone is interested in attending that meeting, they're seeking public comment. And with that, we will now move on to item 6A. We have had some challenges in the city lately with park strips. A number of factors. Sometimes what we do is not meeting code, given our water situation. I mean, putting grass in park strips probably doesn't make a lot of sense going forward, although people can choose. So we're just trying to get some guidance from council on where you would like us to go. We think it's time to update the park strip ordinance. So Russ has done quite a bit of research and has a presentation for us. And then we just like some informal discussion on, where we can go, and then we could perhaps craft something for further discussion.
Thank you, Mayor, Chair. So park strips, this is the area defined between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk. Folks use different terms. Sometimes it's termed planting strip or parking strip, but generally it's park strip. We have a wide variety of applications and current existing conditions. So first, our current codes and specifications. There's 3 areas within the city codes that address park strips or planting strips. First is the Land Development Code. Second is the Public Works Design Standards. And third is the Municipal Code. First, the Land Development Code has section 1732 that addresses landscaping in the right-of-way. A quick summary of that section is they are planted and maintained by the adjacent property owner. Street trees are required in the park strip at every 30 feet. Unless a park strip is too narrow, then our city forester does not recommend a tree. And that's usually 5 feet or wider is the space needed for the tree or the species. Once in a while, if it's a little bit smaller, he will choose a smaller species tree, but generally speaking, 5 feet or wider. This code specifies that it needs to be planted with live plant material at a 50% coverage at maturity. Shrubbery and ornamentals are permitted, but you should choose varieties that don't grow taller than 3 feet. And that's for safety and vision reasons. So if someone's walking down the sidewalk and someone's going to pull into a driveway, they're screened or hidden if the vegetation is too tall. Stone, rock, and bark mulch are accepted, but they should cover 50% or less of the ground. Boulders are allowed, but they should also be smaller in size, 18 inches tall. This is a safety vision issue, but it's also a crash issue. So if you have too big of boulders, car swerves off. They call that the clear zone. And then no signs or private products are allowed in the park strip. There are some exceptions, obviously traffic signs like stop signs. And then downtown, in certain commercial districts, we allow a certain amount of product display in the public park strip or public right-of-way. Xeriscape is defined in the Land Development Code. It's defined as drought-tolerant plants and mulch to reduce water consumption. Mulch alone is not considered xeriscape. There's a term called xeriscape that's used sometimes when it's just a mulch and zero plant material. Okay, so here's our Public Works design standards. We have a series of cross sections. These are street cross sections that are required with new development. We have a wide range of streets. This is considered a local or a neighborhood street, so this is what you'd see maybe in a residential area. It's 60 feet wide. It includes travel lanes and parking, 2 park strips, 1 on either side, and 2 sidewalks. In this case, the park strip is 5.5 feet wide, and the sidewalk is 5. I don't show them all, but this goes all the way up to our major arterial street, which is our largest street. These are 120 feet wide, 5 lanes, parking. In this case, park strips are 8 feet wide. So a summary of the Public Works design standards. All street sections do show a park strip. Park strips range from 5.5 feet to 8 feet wide. There is a note that does state that park strips may be removed at an intersection for a turning lane. So sometimes if you're on a collector or an arterial street, they like to widen those out at the intersection for a left hand and a right hand. And in those cases, sometimes the park strip is removed for that stacking length. If a park strip is removed, it states it needs a minimum 6 foot wide sidewalk. When the sidewalk is directly adjacent to the curb and there is not a park strip, that is often referred to as integral sidewalk. Trees are shown in those cross sections. Okay, the municipal code, so 12 and 8 deal with planting strips is the common term in the municipal code. Some of this language dates back to the 80s. Planting strips are to provide for traditional street trees. Planting strips provide pedestrian safety. So the park strip provides a buffer between the street and where people walk, and that's a safety element. They also are for utility services and driveway approaches. This code states that it should be an 8-foot minimum width, adopted in 1994. So there is a conflict here between some of our cross sections and this language here. And then permits to trim any park strip trees. Abutting property owners shall maintain the park strip. And park strip is defined as public property. Let me jump back really quick. So the right-of-way is all public property, and it typically goes from 1 foot beyond the sidewalk on either side. So all that is publicly owned property. Sometimes there's confusion as to who owns the park strip. The city owns the park strip.
But the resident is required to maintain it.
Correct. Okay, existing conditions. I've been combing the streets, and the theme of our park strip is we have a wide variety of park strip sizes, shapes, and configurations. And a lot of it has to do with the era in which it was developed. You look at our core downtown, it was platted originally with the establishment of the city. You have 99-foot wide right-of-ways, and you have a cross-section similar to this, which is West Center Street. You have a very wide park strip, 12 feet wide. You have large street trees, and the traditional ground cover is turf grass. So I'll call this the traditional. Here is a similar cross section, but no trees. And I find this, I added this just because of the character that a tree can bring to a street. This is 9th North near the middle school.
I was gonna guess 8th North.
Yeah. So then I move 2 blocks east, and this is the exact same street, the exact same cross section with trees. So trees provide character as well as some other things that I'll go over in a minute. Here's an application that we refer to as xeriscaping. So it's a combination of mulch and low water or drought tolerant plant material. In this particular case, they match the front yard of the home adjacent.
Is that a 5.5 foot?
That is, yeah, approximately 5.5 feet wide there. Here's another xeriscape example. This one's on the boulevard. This one uses a combination of mulch, and that's why I added it. So you have some smooth river rock in conjunction with some bark, and then some native plantings and some trees. This is an interesting application here. This is a Fat Albert blue spruce. So this is an example of a safety hazard. A small child walking behind these in conjunction with a car pulling into that driveway could be a safety issue, as well as painful issue if you are walking too close to these. They can be prickly.
Did they pop the top of the tree up?
No,
I think these are-
They grow that way, yeah.
Yeah.
They grow wider than taller, so, yeah.
So here's an application that shows the rock mulch. I included this because of the contrast. The neighbor just down the street is grass, so you can see the difference. And then in the foreground, you see the smoother river rock versus the crushed or the jagged rock there.
And according to our current code, this is not meeting code, correct? Because there's not 50%.
Correct. This would not be in compliance. And by the way, when it talks about 50% coverage, it exempts the trees. So we're just talking about your plants and your ground cover, not the tree canopy. So here's an application on the boulevard that does meet our code. It's a lower water option with some more jagged cobble rock. But what's interesting about this particular application is it doubles as stormwater retention. So if you can see here, there's a scupper in the gutter where the stormwater runs into this area that is depressed. It's kind of hard to see it in the photo, but this is about 1.5 feet lower than the sidewalk. And so it can actually hold stormwater and then percolate down through.
And that was done by the city.
Correct. Here's another city project that is also a stormwater project, but it uses turf grass rather than the rock and the shrubbery. This is on 4th East near 10th North. Again, you can see the scupper and the depression there. A little bit trickier to mow, but you can do it with a V8.
Is that a technical term?
That was done in front of Hillcrest Elementary too, wasn't it? Don't they have that scupper in front of the house?
You're seeing more and more of these because of the new stormwater regulations that the state has adopted.
It's a good idea.
Here's a rock application, no trees. I included this because this is a maintenance challenge for a lot of folks.
That doesn't count on the 50%, I guess.
The weeds?
Well, I guess that's debatable. But in this particular option, there's no front of the house or front of the use. So this is kind of a backyard or a back house. And these types of situations, whether it's a cul-de-sac around or whatever, they tend to be neglected more so than if you're off your front yard or front porch. Concrete, sometimes poured in these areas. It's a really low maintenance option, but it's an aesthetic that some folks don't like. This one is in the process of changing over. I'm going to be curious to see what goes here. Maintenance is a big issue for folks. So this is the integral sidewalk that I was talking about. I'll go over some of this in just a minute. So here's a commercial option downtown that's a little bit of an alternative option. You have a range of kind of some furnishings. There's some bike racks and some seating there, but there's also some mulch, some more low water use, some stepping stones.
Is there a height limitation on the shrubbery? For
3 feet
3 feet.
is what we shoot for, just for that visibility and safety issue. So this is downtown. This is a typical application here where it's entirely paved. So there's technically not a park strip here. This is all just sidewalk. There's usually furnishings, trees, merchandise, other types of things. Here's an application that's a little more heavily vegetated with some larger boulders. So this is Mayor Randy Watts kind of spearheaded what we call the parking strip reclamation. This was very common 10 years ago, where we had a lot of folks just pulling cars into this area, and it was either dirt or gravel. We went through a reclamation process where we converted many of these back into the traditional park strip. There's still a few around town. This one still exists, obviously. But some folks use it as parking. Some of the problems with this is, one, it's public property. But two, it's safety issues. So these cars, they back right out into the travel lane. Sometimes the park strip isn't wide enough, so the bumper hangs over the sidewalk. You can't walk by. So it's both a safety and an aesthetic issue. And here's Xeriscape. So here's your rock option with a fire hydrant.
And the city put that, right? Isn't that where we just added?
This is 1400 North, 6th West.
So it's the city.
Near
And
the
the problem
Bridger Lane.
is, after that year, even if you put the weed barrier down, dirt gets in, they just, look yucky.
Why are there no trees?
That was too narrow, I think, right there. There are a lot of places where they have done, again, the big rocks, which if someone, if a kid on a bike went off or somebody stepped off, they're big enough, you turn your ankle or, you step down, and really scrape your knee.
So we have a variety of widths. We have some areas without park strip. That is the minority. We don't have too many of those integral sidewalks, but we have some. There's a variety of land uses. So downtown commercial is different than industrial, and that's different than residential. Obviously, a variety of landscapes that we just saw. Trees, and I just talked with Rex. We feel like about 75% of our park strips contain trees. So we have a majority of trees, but obviously there's areas where we do not have trees. And then there's different curb types. It's typically the high back curb, but some areas have that rolled curb. And then driveway site distance triangles. Okay, park strips or no park strips. So I wanted to just kind of create a list of pros and cons on why we should have them or why we should not have them in the future. So some of the pros are it's a space for trees. It's a public space for trees. Landscaping, aesthetics. It is that pedestrian separation, or it's a safety buffer for folks walking down the street. It is traditional and historic to Logan, Utah. It provides stormwater runoff. It provides snow storage. So when you have the integral sidewalk, plows will plow the snow right onto the sidewalk. It freezes. It's very hard to remove. That can be a big problem during certain snow events. Driveway approaches. So park strips allow you to grade a driveway approach because you go down into the gutter 6 inches and then you got to come back up. With that width of a park strip, you can do that without taking off your front bumper. If you have the integral sidewalk, you end up with these kind of funky ramps, and sometimes it's difficult to achieve ADA. So if you're in a wheelchair going down the sidewalk and you hit one of these driveway ramps, you tilt one way or the other. In some cases, you have to actually modify the sidewalk to achieve ADA compliance. Door zone, so if you have parallel parking right next to a sidewalk, someone pulls up in a car, opens up a door, it could be a safety issue. So the park strip provides that door zone buffer. Utilities, meters, a lot of those are located in the park strip. And then it provides future right-of-way flexibility. So cons, willingness to maintain. So it's easier to maintain an integral sidewalk, aside from the snow removal problems. From a landscape standpoint, they're easier to maintain for the adjacent property owner. Competition of space. So as we continue to grow, we're competing for every inch. And if we can use that for another use or for another purpose, then it's space that can be utilized elsewhere. Water consumption. So park strips require water. and then undeveloped vacant land adjacent to. So those are really hard when you have a park strip and you have vacant land. So that's the pros and cons. There might be a few more, but that's what Mike, Tanya, and I kind of stewed over the last few days, as well as Bill and Paul helped. Here's just a couple photo examples. So that bottom left is an integral sidewalk right after a plow. And yeah, they're super hard to clear off, whereas the top right shows that space between where you can pile up snow if you need to.
Just a reminder of what's coming, right?
Yes, maybe just a couple days from now. So I did a quick study this summer on the heat island effect. This was July 21st this year, 3:45 p.m. The internet said Logan was 94 degrees. On the left, you see a blank asphalt with just a concrete building. No trees, no shade, no nothing. The temperature readout there was 122 degrees. On the right, I go to Merlin Olsen Park. You have shade, you have landscaping, you have lots of trees, 86 degrees. So that just shows you the benefit of trees. They have a cooling effect. And as cities continue to develop, the heat island becomes more and more of an issue. I included it here because trees are a big part of the park strip. Also, we're experiencing one of the worst droughts in history. Cache County is considered extreme, with even a tiny bit of exceptional drought, according to this latest Utah drought monitor. And so here's just a summary of that. Along with our drought, Utah was just crowned #1 fastest growing state in the nation. So we have a very fast growing population. 2020 was the driest year on record and one of the hottest. So we have record dry soils right now. 32 of the Utah's largest 42 reservoirs currently sit at 55% of capacity. 60% of residential water use is used outdoor for landscaping. Eliminating just one watering can save up to 3,000 gallons on an average 0.7 or about a quarter acre piece of land. Watering times make a big difference. So if you water during the heat of the day, a lot of that is evaporated. And then with a combination of water-wise plants, mulch, and the use of drip irrigation, a park strip can save up to 2,000 gallons every month. This is from Utah.org, as well as Slow the Flow and South Jordan.
Jordan Valley.
That one was South Jordan City.
Oh, okay.
I do have a Jordan water district here. So a lot of cities are thinking about adopting new ordinances. A popular term is flip your strip. So replace your thirsty grass with more drought tolerant or native plants. Some cities are pretty aggressive. They have rebates or other incentives to get folks to do this. There are numerous design resources out there. A lot of water districts or Utah State University extensions have a lot of drought tolerant or native options. Here's one from the Jordan Valley Water Conservation District, which is pretty, aggressive. They've been trying to conserve water for many, many years, not just since we've been experiencing these droughts. They have a lot of different options depending on what kind of style or interests you might have. Okay, so just to go over some of the terminology really quick, and probably over time. Xeriscape is more the native. Xeroscape is, zero plants. Water-wise plants is just another term for like native plants or low water use. I'm not even going to go over those because. So I think the goal tonight was to kind of assess our current and existing conditions and figure out what the appropriate next steps are. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
I know for some of the communities that are doing the flip your strip, it has to be a strip that has grass in it already. They're not offering rebates if somebody does have zero scaping or has just let that die.
They're not using water currently.
Correct. So I know that there's, and the state, my understanding is that the state has funded a good chunk of the flip the strip programs. Is that?
Yeah, there is some money to do that. And again, one of the challenges we have with our public works department is we go in and for some reason we put in a sidewalk and a curb and gutter, then there is a park strip that we have to do something with. And most times there's no water to that park strip. I mean, if there is water on the property for irrigation, the public works will connect that to the sewer under the sidewalk and connect that. You know, sometimes, you know, property owners agree to take care of trees and turf if we put it down, or they say, I don't want to take care of anything, so put rocks. So it's just really a challenge to know, you know, you hate to spend money on it and then just see it die, you know, dead plants, dead sod, but then you know if it's rock, it's going to be weeds in a year if they don't want to take care of anything, so.
Well, I think Hillary wrote a really, I thought Hillary's comment was important, that the rock just adds to the heat index. And so I think that it is zero scaping, and actually adding, you may as well just concrete it. And so that to me doesn't seem like an option that both helps the environment of Logan and solves the low water, So anyway.
In addition to kind of the overall conditions that Russ described, I mean, down on 5th West, this is a project we've looked at doing for a long time. They're using CDBG funds to put in some curb and gutter and sidewalk. That's an older area of town. There's some drainage issues and it's never been addressed. So again, we're putting in park strip, no irrigation, on the properties. These are older properties. Sometimes they're older homeowners who may be used to drag a hose out and irrigate, can't really do that anymore. And Public Works just needs to be able to have a couple of options to give homeowners to say, we're obviously responsible for doing your park strip here. What do you want? But it needs to make sense. So.
Well, we certainly have inconsistencies, and we're certainly not enforcing what our current guidelines are. So it's probably no matter what, we need to address something.
I think there are some beautiful options that you showed that are current in our community. And I think it'd be nice to try and reflect that in our code so that we can encourage people to do something different. They don't have to put grass in there, and it can still look really nice and take pride in what's going on in your yard. So I think the sleeves are a good idea. You've got a sleeve under those sidewalks so you can actually get water.
Yeah, and typically they will do that. But again, if there's not any water,
The problem is we have how many thousand homes that are already established. There's a lot of people that would do it out of goodwill. They're good citizens. They would like to make it good. I certainly believe the xeriscaping, where you have some mulch or mix and have some wonderful plantings. I've seen some renegades that just do whatever they want, and then it turns out to be weeds, and it's just horrible. So the question is, how do you either encourage or enforce? Right. And that's what government's about, is either encouraging or enforcing something.
Well, and on 5th West, that's where our 24th of July parade goes. That may only be one day a year, but on those days, people do like to come out and be in their park strips, and, certainly if it's the big hollow rock, you can't put a chair there. If there's a lot of plantings, can you even put a chair or stand there and enjoy the parade, or no easy answers?
So do we require a permit to put a tree in those park strips right now?
I think it has to be consistent with.
Most of them are put in by our tree people.
Yeah, if you request one, and your park strip qualifies by WIP, the city forester will come and install one.
But somebody just can't choose to do a bush, something out there. It has to be, a tree has to be consistent with what the tree plan is. Isn't it correct?
Well, anything new has to meet code.
Yeah, but if
Well,
you
then,
have maple, ash, then, it doesn't work.
I would say that across the street from me, there were 3-4 horse chestnut trees in the park strip, and 2 of them died. Probably, I don't know, from lack of care or just because. And they took those out and they put in 3 flowering cherry trees, and the city did that. They decided those trees would be an appropriate addition.
Shooting for diversity, because our forest is very kind of
Monoculture.
lopsided. Yeah, very lopsided.
It's mapled.
It's very maple.
But what would you like from us, Holly? Do you want us to give you, I think clearly it would be nice to tidy up all of the sections so they all go together, but at the same time it would also be nice to add the ability for people to bark or, native plants or whatever, but I don't know what you would like from us.
Well, would you like the department, to come back to you with, a draft ordinance? And again, we just thought, well, before we start and try and come with something specific, we'd see if you had any guidelines, specifics, suggestions. But if you want us to just kind of move forward,
I would like to minimize the rock use because I think that it is adding to the heat. And I think there are other alternatives that would serve us better in that regard. And I think, I think mulch is nice, but mulch has got its issues too because, you've got to replace it every now and then. And so.
weeds can still grow through mulch as they do through,
Well, but they're putting landscape fabric down in most cases, right? If they're doing new park strip.
It depends, and again, after a while,
They don't work.
it still can get to be weedy, but again, you have to care about it, whatever the park strip is.
I'm interested in the process. I think we can come to the designer, or at least some range of design. Can we do some period of time where we do high encouragement with some incentives?
Well, we can look at this state, rip the strip incentive.
It would be interesting, but I think it would be horrible to get into the park strip issue. That was pretty bloody, back during your once. I think it was the right thing to do.
The reclamation you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was.
Make it a park strip instead of a parking strip.
Good job. So.
But I think that, I think that initially my understanding was we were concerned because Public Works was trying to provide park strip something when they create a new park strip. So that seems to be one issue. The separate thing is the rip the strip thing and all of that. And if we want to support that, I think we need to have guidelines based on, what you can do if you rip the strip. But it made me laugh. I was thinking when they were talking about how it's public property, there are some places, and you didn't find those, Russ, where people have built their garden out there, and there's tomatoes and, everything else growing out there. So, there's a lot of ways to, rip it and
Use that space.
to use that space. So,
Well, it is a little disconcerting to look at a picture of something the city put in that doesn't comply with our code. So no matter what we do, I agree with you, Mayor Dana said, if we expect our citizens to comply with what our codes are for the park strips, then
we better also
we better modify those so that everybody can be in compliance.
I would think that we can all agree that we want to try and conserve water. We'd like our park strips to look attractive, be somewhere where
And be relatively easy to maintain.
And easy to maintain, yeah. And I like what Russ suggested. You switch from a sprinkling system to a drip system, you use 90% less water. I happen to know that fact. So 90% less water. And so you can put some very low, you can actually put really nice plants in there that need quite a bit of water. With the drip system, you're going to end up using 90% less. And then if you go to a xeriscape, you really don't have to irrigate it at all. So if we go to a xeriscape type strip, it needs no supplemental water. Once you get it established, in fact, if you water it, you're going to kill the plants because they don't need anything other than what Mother Nature provides. So what I'd like to see is an ordinance that is consistent across the board that encourages our citizens to be creative and put some things there. And I brought this for everyone tonight. So this has like Salt Lake City's ordinance on there, which I thought was really good and very, very simple to understand.
Did you get one to Russ?
I did get one to Russ, yeah. And then it's also got the designs, one of which Russ, shared with us. But I also reached out to USU Extension. I talked to JD Gunnell, and he said they would love to help us come up with some ideas, some suggestions that we could suggest to our citizens as well too, so we could have more. The Flip the Strip gives us like 7 or 8 options. It'd be nice if we had more, but we had some xeriscape ideas, some really low water maintenance ideas, some maybe a little bit higher maintenance, and then our citizens have some suggestions of what they can do, how much maintenance they're going to have to put into it, kind of some ideas of it's going to take this much time each year for you to do.
Mark or Russ, for a typical house, I don't know, 100-foot frontage or whatever, what do you expect the cost would be to flip from turf to some xeriscaping with some shrubs? And
it depends on how much percentage of plant material you want to go with. So if we're going 50% plant material, if we're going to go a little bit less.
I mean, is this 5,000, 10,000, 2,000?
No. So it's going to depend on what kind of plants they put in there, but if they've got, say, a 50-foot frontage, 60-foot frontage,
It's 10 feet wide.
Yeah,
8 feet wide.
Yeah, 8 or 5.5, depending on where they're at. You could do it for $1,000.
I know the legislature just limited some of the decisions we could make, but I believe there was an exception for water-wise landscaping. I was just in a league meeting, and one of the cities said they require in their ordinance that any new housing development, single-family, whatever, if they choose not to have water-wise landscaping, and I don't know how they define that, then they automatically pay a higher rate for water out of the gate. So they have some tiered rates. Again, you can't really go back and do that for existing, but that might be something.
For new development, that's a great idea.
That's tough to do too, because there's a lot of new grasses that are coming out that are so they don't need as much water, and they still will look really good. Like you could water them once every 2 weeks and still maintain a green park strip. So it's like there's good options. Yeah, there's good options out there if somebody wants to stick with turf. So
Okay.
So
Thank you for that discussion. We will be back at some point with more details.
I'd be happy to consult. Yes.
It doesn't really help you with the Fifth West, however.
No, we've got it. Did we decide to put that off until spring, or do we just need to get it done, Paul?
Right now, it's sitting prepped for turf grass. And our plan is to put it in, we don't want to leave a muddy mess out there either. Because that's really the only option we have that meets the city requirement.
But again, but there's no irrigation in that, so what happens next year? I mean, maybe because they're planting it late, it might actually live to winter. A lot of times it doesn't even make it,
That's the good news in this case. It was likely to rain at springtime most of the time. But June, July, and August, that doesn't happen.
And again, what do you do with new trees in those areas also? I mean, we've talked about, if there's no irrigation in the park strip, do you put a sleeve on the new trees? Do you try and get the owner to sign a contract that they'll water it every 2 weeks? I mean, do you send them a reminder email every 2 weeks saying, drag your hose out, which, they may or may not do, but sometimes just a reminder, so. You just also hate to see, and sometimes trees die of their own accord, but you just hate to see a new tree, the effort and the money, put in a park strip and.
Because the trees they plant are about $300 a piece.
Yeah.
So, it's not an inexpensive effort on the part of the city. I wish that all homeowners would be willing to give them water.
Me too. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Let's move on to our planning commission update. Jeannie.
I didn't actually go to planning commission this last time, but I can tell you what they talked about. Happily, they thought the new Logan Library design was good, and it has passed through planning commission, and it's on to its next step. There was this neighborhood nonprofit has a housing office expansion that they put forward. Someone wants to paint a mural on the side of a storage unit at 930 South Highway 89. Mike, did they say that was okay? Yeah, they agreed to that. There was a subdivision, 1.29 acres into 6 single-family residential building lots at 257 East, 10th North. And there were several land development code amendments, and the one that inspired the most discussion had to do with urban agriculture. And
Bees and chickens.
and ponies.
Ponies.
Yes. So it was
What's wrong with ponies? I have a pony. Yeah,
Workshop tonight, so.
but anyway, we will be discussing that this evening in more greater detail. So
Very good. Thank you for that update.
no worries.
Appreciate it. All right. It was brought to my attention that we might want to talk about the December meeting schedule. If we want to eliminate one of those, if you want to consult your calendars and see what we're talking about. So we would meet on the 7th for sure, but then the next potential council meeting would be like right there before the holidays.
On the 21st.
On the 21st, yes.
You know, the 7th.
Would you like to do the 7th?
7th.
So do you need a motion to meet again?
I'll move that if you need it.
And
Never
accept.
shake this
Yeah.
out.
We just need to know when you want to meet, so.
Let's plan on meeting on the 7th and
And then we'll meet on the 4th of
on
January
the 4th of January. Let's postpone
with the new council.
the 21st. If you're okay with that.
I'm fine with that. We're going to meet twice in November, though, correct?
We'll meet twice in November.
Okay.
The 16th is far enough away from the holiday that we should be okay.
So once in December, did somebody say something about January? No.
January the
January
4th.
we go right back to
Yeah,
normal.
back to work on
Tough.
the 4th.
Okay,
Yes, right back to work tomorrow.
hard work.
Okay. Let's plan on that, Teresa. Thank you. Yep. Cancel the 21st.
No,
No 21st.
the day will happen, but the meeting.
No meeting on the 21st. Okay, thank you, Tom, for that clarification. All right, let's move on to our action items. Also brought to our attention that the public hearing for the Hogan rezone, they asked for a continuance. Is that correct, Amber?
Yes.
All right, so we've got.
We just don't know when they want to continue till. So have you heard anything yet, Russ? So it's up to the pleasure of the council.
We have the 19th or the 2nd.
I would move that we continue it to November 2nd.
Is there a second for the 2nd?
So November.
Do we know that's, we haven't heard if that's enough time
We
for
don't,
that.
but that would give them enough time, hopefully, to get their ducks in a row.
But we
And
have
that
to- we have
is election night,
It's
which,
election night.
again, it makes it harder for Teresa to have a longer meeting. I mean,
True.
she
Or
has
we
to
can
have
move it to
balance.
December, the first meeting in the second meeting in November.
November 16th.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I just think if we give them, if they know that we've moved it to that time, maybe they'll make a decision by then.
Okay.
We could always move it.
So I would move we postpone, is it postpone, or I move we
Continue.
continue ordinance 21-16
Already
to
did
November
that.
16th. You did that? But you
Yes.
said the 9th though.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Then she
I
changed
said the
to
16th.
Oh,
was fine.
So now second?
Then
Okay.
second. So we've
Okay,
had
tell me what we.
We've had a motion, Tom, for continuance till November 16th, and it has been seconded by Amy.
Oh, okay.
Okay? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it Has
Getting
been,
it
has
fixed up
been
with my
continued.
December
Yeah,
dates.
has been continued. All right, next on our action items, we have a budget adjustment, appropriations, Rich.
This is a request to appropriate 102,690 for a grant received from the state for 911 operations. It's a fairly broad grant. It'll be just supplement the revenue that we have in that fund.
That's for 911. Any questions for Rich?
Nope.
Questions for Rich? All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone who is here who would like to speak in regards to resolution 21-50 with appropriating funds, now's your opportunity. Okay, seeing no one, let's bring it back to the council for action.
Move acceptance of 2150.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
There's a smile from the bench.
All right. Resolution carries. All right, moving on to our workshop items, we have another budget adjustment.
So these are several items. The first is a request to appropriate $600,000 of restricted radio funds that are within the 911 fund for the P25 system. These are new radios.
You told us a while ago this was coming.
Yeah, this has been planned for some time. We did appropriate, I believe, $600,000 last year, so this is additional funds.
What is a P25?
That is a super good question that really smart people over here can probably answer.
Would you
It's a,
help speak to us? We would like to learn more.
So, especially since you just got $102,000 in grants.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have had Brian come in and talk on this, but Shelley Peterson, the one director, basically it's the system for public safety that the radios can be vendor agnostic, so it just opens up the spectrum so multiple vendors can have their equipment on the system. It is statewide, and as a county we've been planning for the implementation for a number of years, so we sought the additional funding probably 7 years ago or so, and basically the funds are going to buy radios for everywhere from Clarkston to Paradise Fire Departments, and then all of the police, fire, and EMS services. Does that answer it enough, the question?
well, I think it's important, I remember from long ago, that this is enabling all personnel, fire and police to talk to each other no matter where they are in the state. State.
So this integrates.
And it integrates because everybody was having their own little system, and so this is like a bigger channel that allows statewide communication if necessary.
I don't need to know the details because I wouldn't understand them anyway. But if somebody's talking to Logan, and now they want to go to Panguitch, how do they do that?
So this is a statewide system. Cache County's been part of it for probably 15 years or so, but there is parts of the state that do have their own radio systems that are built. So if Panguitch was one of those systems, kind of a disparate system that they maintain themselves, that somebody from Logan, if they were going down to fight a fire down there, for instance, that they wouldn't have that interoperability. They'd be operating on two different radio systems. So this P25 system is truly statewide, and so everybody in the state will be, they're all assigned their own channels, they're on different zones, but if they do need to go down anywhere in the state, they can switch over to different interoperability channels and communicate, so.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We do have a few more to talk about. These are all grants. $19,500 from the state's EMS grant for the fire department. $250,000 for after-school programs. We do receive several of these throughout the year, and this is one. And then lastly, $116,010 for additional HUD funds. And this isn't additional, it's just we budget conservatively and then true it up. This is the true up.
See,
That's why we have the one project that gets the extras.
Yeah, exactly. So
Because
this
it's
is the
something-
extra for the extra.
It's a lot better doing that than it is trying to trim one or all of them.
Not nearly as much fun.
So it goes to the 60s. Who gets it?
Yeah, I think that was the receiver project this year.
Thanks, Rich.
It's always so fun hearing from you.
And
Just
You bring us lots of money.
No, he just moves it around from place to
Are
place.
there
just shuffle it.
any other questions for Rich while we have his attention?
Oh, look.
Okay, excellent. All right. Our next workshop is ordinance 21-22 with the Community Development Director, Mike DeSimone.
He took off the cute picture of the little goats.
No, we'll get there.
Are they
Don't worry.
goats? Are they goats?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
All I know is I was walking around the city and I heard some roosters, so
Yep.
they are out there.
Okay, so what you have before you is ordinance 21-22. It's an amendment to the Land Development Code for urban agriculture. And it involves changing 08, 11, 37, and 62, all those different sections. So really what this boils down to, it's we're trying to create some standards for keeping, raising domestic fowl, beekeeping, livestock in Logan City. And right now we don't have any minimum standards for it. It's pretty much the wild, wild west. And so as we started looking into this, we have really a definition of agriculture that's very broad. And so we're trying to clarify the different types of ag and what's appropriate for Logan. We also want to minimize the impacts, the negative impacts of keeping chickens and bees and livestock on adjoining properties. Not everybody sees them as pets or a positive thing. Sometimes they stink and they don't like them. So we're trying to balance those different desires and needs. So the background of this is in our Logan Municipal Code under animal control. What it does is default back to our Land Development Code. So in section 6A 06030, it talks about animals for family food production. Those are your typical farm types of animals that you'd see traditionally. Chickens, bees, livestock, things like that. But it defaults back to our Land Development Code. And then what it also says is that anything that's not expressly permitted in a specific zone is expressly prohibited. So in our Land Development Code, in the definition of agriculture, it's really broad. It runs the gamut from you keeping a chicken in your backyard all the way to a dairy farm. So it's really, really broad. And what we want to do is narrow that down.
As we become more urbanized.
Yeah. How old is that ordinance? I mean, has it been updated?
Well, this definition, I'm not sure where we pulled it, but it's been in our code for the last decade plus. The Logan Municipal Code was amended probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago to throw the other language in there.
Okay.
What's a fur animal?
Mink.
Oh,
There's some mink farms out there.
There were.
not like it. Okay.
I would think you wouldn't raise bear for the fur. Anyhow, so in our use tables in the Land Development Code, ag uses are permitted in the NR2, NR4, and the RC zones. They're prohibited in the NR6 or MR zones. So what that means is up in Hillcrest or in Cliffside, if I have enough property, I can put a dairy farm in, right? But I can't raise chickens down in my half-acre lot in Adams because it's zone NR6. And then the commercial industrial use tables, ag uses are permitted in the gateway, commercial services, industrial, and then the airport zone. And we see some stuff out on the west side of town where folks are still raising cattle or growing wheat, but generally prohibited in other commercial zones. So really the question is, why are we here? Why are we regulating animals? We do get asked by residents that want to raise chickens. Can I raise chickens in my backyard? And in most areas, we have to say no, but what we really say is, we don't really care, just don't cause a problem to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors, share your eggs, work it out, and have a nice day. But we do get our problems about animals. And so really we need some standards to help us define what a nuisance is. It could be odors, noise, but even that's subjective. So we just want to make sure we got something to fall back on. And the real challenge we have is when you look at Logan, you've got a wide range of residential applications, right? You've got a half-acre lot on the Wilson area versus a 10,000-acre lot up in Cliffside. There's just a lot of difference throughout the city. So this is why we want to regulate animals. There's this situation we're dealing with now. There's a lot by the hospital, one of these lots, I won't show you which one it is, but it's about 6,000 square feet. You know, it's a block from the hospital. There's multifamily around it. It's 2 blocks from commercial, university up on the hill. This guy's got 10 goats, 10 chickens, and 10 ducks. So, you know, we don't have a numerical standard to fall back to. And in theory, if he had enough room, he could maintain it, not cause a problem. But when you have that many animals on a small piece of property, it does cause problems. So this is the kind of situation we're faced with. In kind of preparing for the background on this, most cities in Utah allow and regulate chickens and livestock. And really what it comes down to, it's a zoning decision. And it is based on the number of birds, how big your land is, how far away you are from adjoining properties or homes, where it goes on your property, what kind of enclosures you have, sanitation, and then things like slaughtering animals, roosters, and then whether you should or not require a permit. So comparing what Logan has to Cache Valley communities, all these other communities have regulations on, say, chickens. So even in Nibley, they regulate the number of chickens, North Logan. So you can see the range that's on here. At least gives you an idea of what that community thinks is important. And then we looked at other communities along the Wasatch Front as well as further south, tried to find cities that are comparable in size. And generally it's tied, number of birds are tied to a lot size, and they're generally allowed in your single family areas. And most of them aren't very excessive other than like say, you know, Wellsville that allows you to 50 birds on an acre or a half acre lot. So the proposal we came up with, we had a couple of meetings with the Planning Commission, had some public input, and really it's rooted in the definition of urban agriculture, and it's food production within an urban area on a scale that is for personal use, consumption, and compatible with the neighborhood. So that's really what the driving factor is. And the proposed language in front of you is 5 chickens for under 6,000 square feet, and you see all the way up to 15 chickens for over 20,000 square feet. We want to put it in the rear or side yard within a fenced area. We want to see the coop where those chickens are residing at least 25 feet from adjoining dwellings. Keep down the odors and the noise. You want to keep it clean, sanitary. No roosters, geese, peacocks. We had turkeys in there, but Planning Commission wanted to take out turkeys so you could raise turkeys. And then no outdoor slaughtering in the front or side yard.
The ducks are okay?
Ducks are okay.
Outdoor slaughtering. Okay. Happened when I was a kid.
Do it in your backyard.
We did it in the backyard.
So in terms of bees, most cities allow and regulate them. Some just don't. But common elements in those ordinances, again, it's based on a zoning where they're appropriate. You've got to register with the State Department of Ag. The number of hives are tied to a lot size or land area. You've got setbacks from adjoining homes or property lines, location on the property, sanitation, water availability, and then a flyaway barrier, which is basically something you put around a hive to kind of force the bees to take off and get elevation so that they don't kind of float all over one property next door. So here's what's proposed. We did have some comments from folks locally who raise bees. They gave us some good feedback on it. But basically, it's beekeeping in conjunction with a single-family dwelling. You've got to register with the Utah Department of Ag. The number of beehives are based on your minimum lot size. But we put a caveat in there that says if you've got a lot that backs up to a river or backs up to the hillside, then in some cases you could exceed the number of hives based on your specific locale. Same with fencing. You want to see it in the rear or side yard, but again, if you back up something that's big and open, then the fencing is not quite as important. Setbacks from adjoining lots, 25 feet. Keep it clean, provide some water, and then the flyaway barrier again is to direct the flight path and the elevation of the bees.
Can you explain a little bit more about that flyaway barrier? Is that like a constructed thing near the hive that?
It can either be a fence, it can be shrubbery, tree, something that as those critters come out of there, it pushes them, it forces them to go up and out.
Okay.
Yeah. And Mark, you raise bees, you can probably explain it better than I can.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Miniature livestock. So we got a lot of comments on this. These are the little goats, little sheep, little pigs, miniature horses. Numbers of animals are tied to a minimum lot size, 10,000 square feet minimum. Only permitted in a fenced side or rear yard. Requires some kind of shelter or a pen. Setback from adjoining dwellings to minimize odors and nuisances. keep it clean, don't slaughter your miniature pig or whatever you do with these animals in the front or side yard, and then only do it in a detached, single family, NR2, NR4, NR6 or the RC zones.
But if you, NR6, you're not gonna have a 10,000 square foot lot.
Yeah, we do. There's lots of them.
Well, okay, yeah, you're right, never mind.
And then this is for standard livestock, you know, your standard sized donkey, pony, cow, sheep, goat, things like that. Again, tied to a minimum lot size, 20,000 square feet, pretty much the same standards as the other ones. So in the definitions section, we've added definitions for community agriculture versus regular agriculture, community gardens. Typically, those are the ones you see for nonprofit entities or collectives. Community supported gardens, those are the CSAs where people buy into it and they get produce once a week. And then market gardens, things that people do in the backs of their property where they sell flowers or pumpkins or whatever out in the front yard. And then urban ag is those things that we talked about, with things that are related to you raising on your own personal property. Proposed use charts. So the top chart is the residential use chart. We're proposing to allow it in all zones. But again, it's tied to operational standards, functional standards, a detached single family dwelling, for example. And the same thing in the commercial industrial use chart. Again, it's tied to somebody that has a house there.
So nobody can have agriculture in any zone except RC?
The commercial ag, yeah, just RC. If you're doing it now, you're grandfathered, but I'm not sure you'd want to put in a feedlot in an R6 zone.
No, but what if they're just growing hay?
Well, if they're growing hay, I think that's okay.
Well, but if it says no,
If they're already growing hay now, they can continue growing hay.
okay.
Yeah.
And if they're already a dairy farm, they can continue being a dairy farm.
That's correct.
And if they could be the guy that's across 10th West with all the cows right next to the highway,
He's
you continue to do
in the
that.
county. Yeah, he's in the county, but if he was in the city, he could continue that.
Okay.
And the idea is you don't want to establish anything new within
But-
these zones.
My question would be, so you said he's in the county, if he chose to come into Logan City,
Mhm.
would he be grandfathered, would his use be grandfathered, or would we require something different of him?
Well, I guess when he annexes in, we can ask that question, what the long-term plans are for the property. But we do have a right to farm element in our code that would allow him to continue that use.
Okay,
And
I just don't want-
grandfathering does run, whether he's in the county or not, it would run with the land, so
Right.
that would be a decision to make in your annexation decision.
because I just don't want, I don't want somebody to have their land annexed and then all of a sudden we find out they can't have 500 cows.
Or a farm.
Yeah, or farm.
Yeah, and everything that's existing will continue. It's the new stuff that we want to have a limitation on. So it's the new pig farm that's going to go up by your house or up Hillcrest. Under the current definition of ag, again, it's really broad in its commercial or industrial scale. So you don't want a mink farm up there, I'm assuming. But if it's an existing mink farm on the west side of town that comes into the city, then yeah, they continue that until it switches to something else.
So is there a difference between the kind of agriculture that grows soybeans, corn, and wheat, and alfalfa, and the kind of agriculture that has dairy cows and, is there a definitional difference?
Not according to our definition. It's all lumped into that one size.
But is this the opportunity for us to change that? I don't know if
I
it's,
don't think we need to.
okay,
I think, so you look at the way it's scaled, urban ag is the little stuff that you're gonna do behind your house. You're gonna raise one pig for your family, slaughter it once a year, make bacon. If you're gonna grow pigs commercially, you're gonna raise hundreds of animals and rotate them through. And that you're gonna do in an agricultural area, not in the middle of Logan. I think that the important thing is Logan is 52,000 people now, university. So as we densify, those ag uses on the edges of town are eventually going to convert into like a Costco or a FedEx or something else, and they'll get moved out further into the county. What we don't want to encourage is a full-scale, industrial-scale agriculture use within Logan City.
okay, all right.
And there's the cute little dwarf goats. Any more questions?
I just want to say thanks for reaching out to the Beekeepers Club and hopefully to the extension to help put this together. So thanks for taking the time to do the research.
So in the minutes from the planning commission, Kimber, you talked about the legally existing non-conforming use. So for example, this gentleman that's got the 10 goats and the ducks and the chickens, if he's had them there, even though he's not in compliance with this, would he be allowed to keep those until, not replace them and keep them? It looks like some of the comments in the public hearing.
I don't know
also address
specifics of that case, but I do not think that was ever legally established, so it wouldn't qualify. But even if you have a legally existing non-conforming use, you can still violate the nuisance statutes and ordinances, so.
But
I don't know when this one happened, but I'm pretty sure it's not grandfathered.
Yeah, I don't think it'll grandfather.
well, why wouldn't it be grandfathered? He's doing it now.
Because he's in a zone that doesn't allow animals, doesn't allow agricultural uses.
But then you'd have to say that for everybody.
Well, yeah, technically, it gets back to what Kimber said, is when was it established? We're trying to figure that out, but then it's also a nuisance issue, so we're going after that respect.
Well, I can understand the nuisance issue, but I can't understand the selective grandfathering issue.
Well, it's not selective, so in the planning commission, the specific one that I referenced was grandfathered, was established in 1947, which predates our zoning ordinances. And that's how, if it was legally established prior to the regulation that prohibits it, that's considered legally established. That's really the only one we had addressed as being legally established. Now, there is some, we haven't done the research yet. I'm not exactly sure when it became illegal. I think it was when our last amendment to Title VI, our animal regulations, I think is when we tied it to the land use code. Prior to that, we didn't. I don't think we regulated urban agriculture. So,
but what I'm saying is that, I know someone with bees. And if he hasn't had bees for a really long time, then you would say he can't have bees, he's not grandfathered.
Depending on his lot size.
I think because 2016, did we find out when that was added into the animal code?
I think it's in like 2018.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
So prior to that, then we didn't regulate animals, they would be grandfathered.
So you have to go, I know people with 13 chickens, 15 chickens
We're not going to count chickens.
in their backyard.
And quite frankly, it's funny, we're not going to go out and count chickens unless it's a problem with nuisance and odors and things like that. People, I've heard this for I don't know how many months now. Oh my God, you're going to make me get rid of my pets because I call their name and they come running to me. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. If you've lived fine like that and you've got along with your neighbors, go forth and conquer.
But in the future, you can't add 22 roosters to the 20
Yeah,
you already have.
what we're going to do is minimize the nuisance aspect of it.
Okay.
So a rooster that's crowing at 2 a.m. is going to be a nuisance to the neighbors. Or a peacock running around the neighborhood is a nuisance too. And really most people are responsible. So most people will realize I can have these animals back there are not really ticking me off. But the guy that's got 10 goats, 10 ducks, and 10 chickens on a small piece of land is really making his neighbors upset. And it's because it is a nuisance. It's because it's got too many animals there for that property. And that's where, so we have standards for the lowest common denominator. It's always that one guy that ruins it for everybody else. And that's why we have trying to put this into place.
So they discussed the miniature horse thing. It was on comments that they talked about moving that to miniature livestock, but that was not done in what would get passed out of planning.
Yeah, well, it was.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's under the new language. It's under miniatures. And we didn't put a size threshold for what a miniature animal is. We're just going to base it on. We're going to base it on kind of what the across the industry standard. You get miniature cows.
Hey Mike, can I have a service rooster?
Put a little vest on it.
If you really need to, Tom, and it sleeps in your bed with you at night and it lives in your house, have at it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike?
Before we get up.
Yes, because I think we've covered everything really very well. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have any questions, just give me a call.
Planning
Sorry I
Commission.
missed that planning
Yeah, I think the
commission.
Planning Commission did a great job doing research too. So
Kimber loved it.
all that.
They passed it 7-0, right? Okay.
You've got room for miniature ponies at your house,
No.
I don't have
He
a
doesn't
car,
even
so I don't
have
have a pony.
He won't even have a dog.
right? Snow fog.
I don't need a dog. I have everybody in my neighborhood who has a dog, and
So you just share.
that's enough.
Participate. Okay, Mike, thank you so much. All right. Any other considerations for this evening on our agenda? That's great. Amy,
I will say at our next meeting, I would like to talk about the Utah League of Cities and Towns.
Oh,
And the
yes.
resolution.
Yes.
Can I talk about it now, or we can put it off to the next meeting?
do you want to wait till Ernesto's here?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can
we'll
talk
do
about
that.
it.
Okay.
And Chief Dustin is not here. so-
And I did want to mention that Ernesto was excused for tonight, so I forgot to mention that earlier. So if there's no other considerations, we will adjourn our meeting for tonight. Thank you all for being here. And we will convene our Logan Redevelopment Agency. We have one action item on the agenda for tonight. Kirk, would you like to run us through that again, please?
You betcha, I'd be happy to.
Resolution 21-49 RDA.
Okay, so the resolution consists of a proposed assistance package from the redevelopment agency to the TRIO group. And so let's just, as Mark said, let's run through the project just so you're familiar with what we discussed a couple of weeks ago. So there's,
You can be quick too. So
I'll be really quick with that.
Yeah, if you have a microphone closer to you.
please, guys.
There is the project, a rendering to be located at 300 South, 100 West, just east of the high school, more specifically the tennis courts of Logan High School. Another rendering there. You can see the bistro. This is a mixed-use project, so the bistro would be right there on the corner of 3rd South, 1st West. We'll skip that image there. The project will consist of 69 residential units and about 13,000 square feet of commercial space and a number of amenities, including electric vehicle charge stations, electric bike charging stations, joint use patios, the bistro as I mentioned, and of course it brings a number of benefits that we could speak to specifically if you've got some questions. The Economic Development Committee reviewed the project and recommended the following. Getting ahead of myself. $250,000 from the RDA's Affordable Housing Fund. I'll just back up a little bit here. Yeah, well, you've seen the project, so there's some economic incentive justifications. Part of it is they're adding commercial space off of Main Street. They had some land assembly costs that were above market, and then of course the amenities, including the charging stations that you saw pictures of. So with that, I'll entertain any questions if you'd like.
Are there any questions for Kirk? Thank you for refreshing our memory.
So I know when we use that term blight finding, was that for the entire RDA area, not just for this project area, correct?
Specifically for the downtown redevelopment
Right.
project area, right?
The area, not this specific location.
Correct.
Thank you.
No other questions for Kirk? This is a public hearing for our action item for Resolution 21-49 RDA. If you would like to make a comment, since we still have about 60 or 70 people here in the gallery for tonight, now is your opportunity to make a comment on Resolution 21-49 RDA. Thanks, Rob.
Hi, I'm Norman O'Hara. I live here in Logan. I'm just curious, what does it mean, Affordable Housing Fund? So the affordable housing, what's the definition?
Go ahead, Kirk, please.
So the Affordable Housing Fund consists of dollars that are specifically earmarked when revenues flow into the RDA. So there's some statutory requirements that apply to specific project areas when they were created. One of which was the downtown redevelopment project area. So specifically, for every dollar of property tax revenue that is received,
we set aside 10% of those revenues for affordable housing. They can be used for affordable housing projects, be it construction, improvements on any project within Logan City boundaries. More specifically to tonight's information, they can be used for any type of housing, even market rate housing within the project area. And that is so because there is a blight finding which was made when the project area was created. So the assertion is that the legislature, when they allowed and created that provision, saw value in introducing housing into a project area, be it affordable or market housing, in terms of revitalizing that area, and specifically for downtowns, bringing those ingredients into the downtown that are so necessary for a complete revitalization.
Great. Thanks, Kirk.
Hello, good evening, John Shiddick, Logan. I wasn't even here to see this. I wasn't going to comment on this, but it just sort of piqued my curiosity a little bit, mostly because of an odd thing that happened today when I was speaking with, I met one of the new chefs coming in to one of the new restaurants downtown, and he was absolutely panicked because he's looking for an affordable place to live. And struggling with it, watching rents go up like crazy. And so again, it's kind of related to a little bit to the last question. And Gina, I know I've heard you say this, and people being worried about affordable housing in town. And you all have heard me harp on I've got a back rental. The guy's in 400 square feet. And his utility costs are, $90 a month. And I'm in a, 2,000, 3,000 foot house, and my utility flat fees are $90 a month. So there are things that we can attack with affordable housing. I'm a little concerned that this project, I would like to see the funds do more for affordable housing, and I'm worried that this project, would this still happen? Are they not going to make money if they don't get $250,000 from the city? Are there better ways to use, which obviously isn't, it's called affordable housing, but it's not. But it'd be nice to see those funds really kind of, let's try to actually do the affordable housing rather than subsidize this group to create a property. So just thought, thank you.
Thank you, John.
So I will say that we rarely have anyone bring us an affordable housing project to support. So that puts us in a bind, because my understanding is if we don't use the money for housing, we have to give it back to the state. So I find myself in a bind. In the time I've been on council, nobody has brought forward an affordable housing project and asked for money. It's all been a little bit affordable and a lot market rate. And so do we use the money? Do we return the money? I don't know what the best answer for that is. And selfishly, I guess I feel like the best answer is for us to get housing downtown and create a vibrant, revitalized downtown, which will then hopefully raise the boat all over the place for people and make it. I struggle a lot with affordable housing just because I don't know how to make it happen. We can't build it, and nobody comes and says, here, I want to do this amazing affordable housing project. The closest we've had is the project on 2nd North and 6th West, and they applied for federal funding to offset rents, and they have a large affordable component to that project. But it requires you to, apply and do all kinds of you know, I don't know what all is it required.
Light D, what is it? The tax.
Light.
Are we still in the public comment? Am I allowed?
Sorry.
We're still in the public comments.
Yeah, I apologize. We've harped on this so much, and I know it's a kind of a touchy subject, but it's LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. It's the only way to make a low-income housing project, unless you're a 501c3 charity, right? So it's the only way for a business to create a low-income housing project. And it's extraordinarily competitive in the state. If it weren't, I mean, we would love to do a LIHTC project. So we've said that before. It requires, it's a funny system. The more LIHTC projects you do, the more likely you are to get another LIHTC project in the future. So Deloitte's done them.
Is it a state system or a federal system?
Federal.
It's federal.
It's federal funds, but it goes through the state.
So do you compete with other developers to get those credits?
Yep.
Okay. And that's why it's
difficult. Everybody wants them. It's somewhat ironic. LIHTC projects are extraordinarily profitable for developers. So the only way to drive down rent costs in the valley, anywhere, the valley is low on housing right now. That's just it's pretty simple. I mean, it's Econ 1500 right now. The supply just can't meet demand. Demand so far outpaces supply right now. So the only way to drive down market rates to be affordable is to increase supply. And that's the only thing that's available to us right now. We'll continue to seek LIHTC projects because they benefit the community and because they're ultimately good projects. And if Deloitte wants to share in some of that, if he wants to take his name off the list every year, we'd be happy to take his place. But until then, we'll keep trying to break into that. And we'll keep providing, all we can do is increase inventory until we meet supply and we see some kind of equilibrium.
And John, just an FYI, for instance, that new housing development on 6 West and 200 North that is being done by Wasatch, a good portion of that is considered a low-income project. And the city did not provide an incentive. We did provide a letter of recommendation to them saying we endorse the project. But again, we did not give any incentives for that, but we did help, move that project along, just as an FYI.
And I know there's a lot of other people here to speak, John, but
I was going to ask if I can approach again just for 2 questions. I'm not sure who this gentleman is.
short and quick. Yeah, he's the developer.
Sorry, I've introduced myself so many times to the council. I apologize. Mike Jewell.
Okay.
I'm with the developer.
Thank you. There are probably I would love to develop my back house. I'd love to have somebody develop the house next to Whittier Center that's been condemned. I think there's options for grants and other options versus if it's a supply and demand, I think there's an economic incentive to do it without this, or that this could be used to other things. Just saying. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. But that's not how the RDA process work. You don't do this little.
John, you might look at the new ADU ordinance. I think you're outside of the Adams exclusion zone. Does it go across 4
It's not attached and it's not.
Okay, so it doesn't meet that criteria.
Right.
Got
it. Goes down to thirds.
Right.
Yeah, the ADUs are our best bet for affordable housing. That's limited.
But there could be grants for, this could be by grants ADUs to provide housing.
Let's bring this back to the council for, I guess, the council, the agency, for discussion. Go ahead, Jeannie.
Well, just to respond to what John just said, we have offered in the past money for homeowners to do things like that, and nobody took any. So it's difficult. It's like this whole. It's in a way it's a circle. You try and it doesn't work, and then you do something else, but you're always trying to do something else, and you don't exactly know how to get it done. And so, personally, I would rather create additional housing so that we do help create enough housing that maybe the market does level out, even out somehow, rather than returning money to the state for whatever it's going to use it for.
Their best bet for right now. Any other comments?
Well, we did have our homeless coordinating council today, and there is a $13 million American Rescue Plan grant that's available for organizations to start to address some of the housing shortage for supported housing.
For organizations?
It can be nonprofits, it could be BRAG, it could be. So we had a conversation today about whether or not that's something that can be done here in Cache County with the different people on that. So hopefully.
Could a city be that organization?
It could be BRAG. As I understand from our conversation today.
Rich is shaking his head.
It could be BRAG.
You could hire 5 people, but no.
Right.
We don't, the city.
Some
Yeah,
infrastructure.
would be good in that.
Correct. So it would be BRAG or nonprofit housing or an organization like that. But I think the city could provide encouragement and support for programs like that. It is funds that are covering outside of Salt Lake, Weber, and Provo counties too. So this is the rest of the state as opposed to the core of where 80% of the funding for those type of projects
Utah County.
is Utah
County.
Sorry, not Provo, Utah County. So it's specifically funds for the state of Utah. And so there is some discussion about how that might be able to work here to be able to provide some of that supportive housing for individuals that are at risk for homelessness. So the low income and very low income people in our communities. So, but it's got to start quickly because the application deadline is December. So
That's close.
Could they do voucher programs with it?
I do not believe so, but you can use it for operating costs for up to 5 years. So case managers, for example, could be, some of the funding could be not just for bricks and mortar, but for some operational things.
Okay.
So I can talk about it more in 2 weeks when I have a little bit more of a handle on it.
That sounds great. Plan on it. Okay. Open for a motion.
Well, I like the project. I think it's qualifies for this type of support, and so I will move acceptance and passing of resolution 2149.
And I will second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of resolution 21-49 REA, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Resolution passes. If there's no other items on the agenda, we will adjourn for tonight. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your comments.
Thank you.